Do you know who I am, though? Who?
Kelly.
Yes, Mama.
You might be wondering why this person is reacting this way to their family members simply saying their name. Well, this woman has dementia. Dementia is a common disease among elderly people where they have memory loss. But that's the simple explanation. There's so much more to it than that. What if you looked at what you believe to be a total stranger to you, like this guy? And it turns out this is your brother. You see him and people are saying how he has importance to your life, and you're even in family photos with him. You have no memory of who he really is. I'm Tyler, a guy with little experience in this subject, but I want to know how Alzheimer's and dementia change the brain. Science about dementia. So, first of all, one of the most important cells in the body, and specifically the brain, are neurons. Neurons aren't the most populous cell in the body, but they are arguably the most important. The way the brain receives signals in order to move, eat, think, just remember anything, just to do stuff. The neuron has to receive a signal, and then some magic stuff happens. Then it sends an electrical charge through this tunnel, and then it sends neurotransmitters through a synapse. What? It jumps the thing go through here, yeah. The dendrite receives what? The dendrite? This thing. A neurotransmitter on specific receptor sites, these things. So basically, things happen, neurons go crazy, and then it causes an electrical signal to run through here, jumps through this, and then they find a receptor site and then something happens. This is happening constantly, and it's how we feel things and move. So it's happening currently, right now. Pretty epic, right? Metabolism is when cells break down chemicals and nutrients within themselves. The chemicals are oxygen and glucose, produced by blood circulating in the brain. 20% of the energy in the human body goes to the brain. That's more than any other organ. Most cells in the body don't live very long, but neurons do, over 100 years. They have to always be repairing themselves to live for this long. They have to strengthen and weaken their synaptic connection based on stimulation. This helps people to learn, remember, and repair the brain. They break and rebuild connections with other neurons as well. Neurogenesis is a process in which completely new neurons form, usually in adults. Now let's talk about glial cells. These are the most populous cells in the human body, outnumbering neurons by 10 to 1. They support the neurons and help to repair them. Microglia help with physical and chemical damage. They clear cellular debris. Glial cells and blood vessels work with each other to do this. Best friends. Okay, now how does Alzheimer's affect all this? Typical aging involves some brain shrinkage, but Alzheimer's has mass neuron death, dysfunction, and connection loss. It starts off by cutting off memories. The neurons stop their functions when they have Alzheimer's. It usually only attacks memory at the beginning though, but later stages involve targeting the cerebral cortex, which is dampening the ability to be able to speak, reason, and to behave socially. People with Alzheimer's are eventually unable to function by themselves, therefore needing a caretaker, and then they pass away. There is a naturally occurring protein in the brain called beta amyloid. With Alzheimer's, this protein builds up to an unnatural amount and clumps together to form plaques between neurons, making cell function slow down. This is just an example of one kind of Alzheimer's, but there are many ways that it can happen. But in all of them, neuron function is disrupted. There's so many. It's unbelievable. Certain symptoms can be found in people that may have dementia or Alzheimer's undiagnosed. Of course, memory loss, difficulty communicating or finding words, difficulty with visual and spatial abilities such as getting lost while driving, difficulty reasoning or problem solving, difficulty handling complex tasks, difficulty with coordination and motor functions, confusion and disorientation. They also say how, for example, if you're acting out of character, getting extra depressed or anxious, being paranoid or agitated, that these may also be examples of symptoms. These are psychological changes, and they change a person's personality. Dementia can be caused by loss of nerve cells, and it differs based on where in the brain the damage is. But there's really no way to prevent it, and this cause isn't necessarily applicable to everyone. Now, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Alzheimer's causes dementia. Alzheimer's is caused from mutated genes that can be passed down to families. Dementia is the loss of memory and cognitive ability, whereas Alzheimer's is the mutated genes. At least that's what I picked up from it. So that was a ton of really big words in science, but let's talk about something we've all probably heard. The caretaker, everywhere at the end of time. You may have heard this song before, probably from a video involving liminal spaces or even in the background of this video earlier. But I didn't just pick some funny meme song. This song is actually from a series of albums by the caretaker. For context, the real artist's name is Leland Kirby, but he takes the role of someone with dementia. He does this partially because he watched the shining ballroom scenes with oldies music, which is how I also got into that genre of music. It's really nice. Highly recommend it. Also, The Shining's a great movie. Watch that too.
No charge, dear Mr. Torrance. No charge? Your money's no good here.
Anyway, these albums wouldn't be as iconic as they were without the cover artworks of Ivan Seal. They seem to almost resemble things that you've seen before, but they are items you wouldn't normally see together in the way they are placed. And that's part of the definition of a liminal space. Most liminal spaces are nostalgic, kids play places from the early 2000s to 2010s, which is of course nostalgic, except a theme in liminal spaces is there's never anybody in them. A few of them, or more like a lot of them, most of them, are transitional spaces, which means a place you wouldn't normally be in for that long of a time, like an elevator or a stairway. You know, places that help you get from one place to the next. They're not typically places you would linger in, and a lot of times people just come and go through them. But when there's no one there, it gives kind of feeling of comfort, but also discomfort. It's hard to describe. I know there's some definition for the feeling you get, but here it is, if I've ever found it. But anyways, back to the albums. In another album of Leland Kirby's, An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, it pictures a matchstick in a ball of clay. Two things you may see often in artworks, but not together. These albums are about simulating the feeling of losing your memories, so it's probably to show that happening. I'm going to give you a gross oversimplification, because there's no way I'm going to be able to give you the same feel that listening through it will. Volume 1 has some jazzy, old-timey samples of really nice music. An overarching static looms over it, showing that things aren't 100%. Volume 2, the static grows louder, but the music remains discernible and listenable, admittedly less than before. In Volume 3, we start to hear familiar tunes. They seem more distant and staticky. We start to hear some skipping and repeating. Volume 4 is when it starts becoming hard to listen to. The music is no longer discernible, and though you can sometimes recognize a sample of something you heard earlier, it fades as quickly as it shows up. Volume 4 only begins at the 2-hour mark, and goes till around 3.5 hours. It's a really hard listen. This is an ambience album, but it's very hard to be listening to almost music, layered and cut up into static. But Volume 5 has to be the toughest part to get through. Now the music has become total noise. It sounds like a horror movie, but not in a jump-scary way, in a suspenseful, disturbing way. You can no longer recognize any of the sounds, and it really just sounds like a busy city, or just chaotic ambience with nothing to compare with. It goes for 1.5 hours, slowly devolving into almost nothing. Volume 6. This segment is almost purely static, with an occasional, maybe familiar sound. The last 10 minutes are the only real music you've heard in hours at this point, and it's almost angelic sounding. I can't put it into words, so let me play a clip. This is then cut short by pure, uninterrupted static for the real final 6 minutes, symbolizing death. The end. This album has educated so many people, and I highly recommend you listen to it. Don't do it when you're in a good mood though, because it is super emotional. It's also quite lengthy to listen to all 6 at around 6.5 hours. I just believe it's something everyone should fully experience at least once to get the full feel of what the album is trying to portray. So yeah, that was my project. I don't know anyone with dementia, I don't have it, but I just found this subject to be very interesting, and a lot of YouTubers inspired me to do stuff like this, the biggest one being Solar Sands. He's done a couple of videos about liminal spaces and like, do you recognize anything in this photo? Those are both really good. I can't link it because I don't think I'm uploading it to YouTube, but look these up and watch them if you want more information and a good watch. Also, all the drawings of the like terrible little squiggly guys there, those were me. I drew those. The medical drawings, ain't no way, I did not do that. But I do have enough talent to draw a yellow zigzag with legs on it, so you're welcome for that explanation, I guess. But yeah, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, thank you for educating yourself. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Bye!